Hello, hello. It's Dr. Eaglin here with COP4708 Applied to Database 1, and we're now in Module 7 in the second lecture of our Introduction to SQL. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this View Ridge Gallery database that we've got the design for, and we're going to show you, we've shown you a little bit of how to create stuff, but we're going to just a little bit more about how to create it. And with SQL, we've talked about a little bit of SQL, and I know it's all kind of brand new and fresh for you. But the beauty of SQL is it's easy. That's the whole point of SQL. And a lot of times it just simply makes sense. So let's take a look at first. We got these tables that we need to make, and let's start all the way on the right-hand side over here with the artist table. So how do we do that? Well, in SQL, you issue the command. First thing we do is we go to a SQL window and you're using Oracle Live SQL in this class, but any window that allows you to execute SQL in a database. And voila, what we do is we say create table. That is the keywords of the command. Then right here, create a table, the name of the table, and then we're going to go ahead and list all the rows or the columns of the table. So we're going to start with artist ID, which will be a number, and not null because we can't. That one has to be filled in. So if you leave the not null off, you can put null here, but you don't have to. If you leave it off, it's a nullable field. So the name of the column, the type of the column, and anything else about the column, comma, the next column, the name of the column, the type of the column, this. So you do need to know what types are available to you. Number and character are two of the ones that you'll use a whole lot. I actually use varchars, but they're just a little bit more flexible, but very much the same as a character. And then in the case of like birth date and deceased date, you can use numbers, but you also can use, if they're truly dates, you can use, and the reason we're using the number here is because we're just going to put the years. And then you can just say, oh, by the way, I'm going to declare the primary key of this table to be artist ID, which, by the way, needs to be not null if you do that. Once you've created the table, and how do you do that? You take this string and you put it into the SQL window and you execute. And you should see a little thing that says table created, or you may see something that says such and such error and such and such. Whenever somebody seems to get that such and such error and such, they tend to panic. Little red line. Oh my God, what am I going to do? Well, here's what you do. Read it. Read what it says. Most of the time, it's like you left off a comma, or you have got the spacing wrong, or your parentheses don't match. And it tells you this. I get more questions that say, oh my God, I can't figure out what's wrong with my database, and I keep getting an error message, and I look at the error message and it's obvious what the problem is. So read it and see if you can figure it out. If you can't figure it out, one of the things I do recommend is just copy and paste the entire error message into Google. Other people run into this error message, and you're going to see the common mistakes that people make that leads to that error. Because most of the errors you're going to be running into at this point are going to be really common errors. You shouldn't be getting any of these really weird ones because you're not doing anything really weird yet. We will, don't worry. Now, how do you get the data into the table? The insert. So the command actually makes perfect sense. Insert into the name of the table. Here are the fields. Boom. And here are the values. Boom. Notice that the strings have to be in a string format. If you put, in the case of the number ones that you had for those dates, if you put those in as a string, it will convert it for you. You could also simply put insert into artist, leave off this entire first part and put values, but if your values are out of order, you got a problem. Also, make sure that you spell Russian with an A. They're not Russians. Yeah. Okay, I usually catch this stuff as I go along. There is a way in the SQL, the live SQL, to not have to do this command for every single line. You can do this command for every single line. You can actually, once you've actually got it working, you don't need to do this front part if you know that your order is good. Also, it is pretty easy just to copy and paste this over and over and over again and just change the values. That makes it relatively easy. But you can also do this. You can do multiple lines using this insert to into with names as. And notice that the from dual, whoops, and you actually have to have from dual union all those. I didn't put those in caps, but those are keywords. So that one allows you to do a lot of rows at one time. And when you do that, okay, and you execute this, you put this in there, blah, 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 it's going to, and you do the execute, you're going to get this thing that says at the bottom here, 3 rows inserted, because it inserted 3 rows. And then if you know that if you did that, it did it well. You're going to actually get a result that tells you whether they inserted. If they aren't inserted, if you made a mistake, it's going to tell you. So here's the data for the artist. This is what it'll look like. This is for that database. I didn't insert all of them at one time. You can easily check the inserted information. I typically just use select star from artist because it's just going to show me everything. And I don't have to type all these things out. But you can also say, hey, show me each of these. Artist ID, name, nationality, birth date, disease date from artist. I don't have to do that, though. I can just say select star from artist, and it should work. Views. If you want to see a partial part or information on tables that have been joined together, which we haven't done joining yet, that'll be later, we then can create a view, which is a way of looking at the data that you define specifically. So the way to create a view is simply create view, artist info view as, select name, nationality from artist. Now it's just going to show us those 2 fields from that one table. And then once you've created that view and you've got data in the table, you can say select star from the name of the view, artist info view, order by name. That's quite useful. Okay, because many times you want to give people access to only specific pieces of the data, so you don't want to give them direct access to the entire table to select stuff from it. You want to control what they've got access to. In that case, you create a view, and in that view, you put in only the fields that you want them to see. Again, this is not difficult at all. Once you go into the live SQL, you just start playing with it, you're going to find, hey, this isn't hard at all. What do you know? The work table. Okay, remember we go back. I'm going to jump all the way back here. We've got all these tables. We've got artist, work, transaction, customer, and then we got the join table. Well, let's go all the way back down to where we're at. And how do you put those together? Now, look at this. The work table has same as syntax, create table, name of the table, all the columns of the table, primary key defined, and foreign key defined, because there's a foreign key, which is artist ID in this table, and it references artist, which, by the way, has to reference the primary key of the artist table. And the artist table is created, and the primary key is defined, so it knows that if you reference artist, that it's referencing the primary key of artist. Now, here's the thing. When you put something into work, you have to give it the correct artist ID, not the artist name, the artist ID, when you insert. So when you're inserting in, note that we have, in this case, we're going to use the multiple insert capability. But notice here, when we have La Leconte, which is surrealist style painting, by artist number 2, well, if we go back up here and we look at artist number 2, whoops, let's see, let's find artist number 2, because I got the artist. Artist number 2 is Wassily Kandinsky, which is a Russian artist, and it has to exist. That artist must be in there before you can insert any of the works for that artist into the work table. Got it? And you got to do it by the number. So here are some works attributable to the different artists that we created. And I've got a couple tables worth of works here. That's basically a whole lot of rows of different works for you to play with there. Actually, a lot of them were entered twice. Not sure what's up with that, but you know what? It is what it is. Just the way this, I'm using these slides that were made by somebody else here, and they just entered them twice. What do you know? So if you want to display this stuff from the work table, you select blah, 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 whatever you want from work, or as I must always go, select star from work. And I don't mean the word star, S-T-A-R. I mean the star. I mean Shift 8, star. The same thing that you use for multiplication on a computer. Customer, the next table in the list. And note that you've got a bunch of not null fields. And in this case, I'm just demonstrating your ability to declare that these can be null. If I left that null off, you know what would happen? The exact same thing as if I put that null on. It's allowed to be null. The not null, however, is important if you want to make sure that you can't insert null fields into that. Okay, and you've seen the insert statement, and here's some data that you can insert there. Now, the intersection table. Here's a way to do the intersection table. Customer, artist, which is an intersection table between the two. Now, what we've done is we said here's the customer ID, here's an artist ID, and we said that the primary key is a joint primary key of customer ID and artist ID. Personally, I would not have designed it that way. I would have actually created 3 fields, with the first field being customer/artist, or basically customer artist ID, and it would have a it would be its own unique one. Reason being is that finding values in this table can actually be sped up in many situations by doing that. So okay, this is also going to work. So you've got the customer ID, the artist ID, and they're both foreign keys. One references artist, one references customer, and this is a join table. This allows you to have a many-to-many relationship between customers and artists. Isn't that nice? Okay. Now, is there anything wrong with using the dual primary key? No. Okay. I just prefer, my personal preference is simply to have the, and one of the main reasons I do that is I like to use identity fields. You haven't seen identity fields yet, so you wouldn't know what that is, but you probably do know what that is because many of you have actually played with databases before. But I tend to make all my primary keys identity-based numeric primary keys. It makes my life easy. And as doing real database work, the one thing that I always want is to make my life easy. You will want to do the same. So as you start working with databases and you learn techniques that make your life easy, I highly recommend that you use those techniques. Here's some data that link those customers and those artists together. And I got one more table I got to put together here. And I've got the transaction table where I've got the primary key. I've got 2 foreign keys. I've got and I've got these different fields that were actually defined earlier. Now, here's some fun stuff. If you're using Oracle Live SQL, which if you're in my class, you are using Oracle Live SQL, that little thing over there says schema. Okay. You can actually ask it to output this for you. Well, first you got to make the table, but if you want to say, oh shoot, I made the table. Well, what do I need to do here? I've made the table, but I want to see the create table command that I would normally get. Basically, I want to reproduce it, and I haven't saved my SQL. It'll do it for you. It'll actually generate from the table that you've created the SQL to create the table again. Why would that be important? Because a lot of times, if you make a mistake, you drop the table and you want to recreate it. It's easy to recreate the table if you have it create the table, drop the table then, make your changes, and then rerun the SQL. See? There are ways to make your life easy. Again, some of you guys are going to be sitting here panicking about SQL. Don't. SQL is easy. There are really complex things that you can do in SQL, but the basic stuff in SQL that you do on a regular basis. Creating tables, setting up primary keys, setting up identities, putting fields together, and then defining important keys and primary keys, which is pretty much 95% of the work. Easy. Every now and then somebody's going to come to you and say, I need a view that joins these 45 different tables, but only shows this and this. Sometimes that'll be a little tricky, okay? And you might have to sit there and play with the different ways to do that. You're not doing that yet. You will do that later, okay? You'll learn how to do these things. They're not, some of them are hard, some of them, I mean, they can just get complex, especially if you've got a very highly normalized set of tables. Here's some data for that trans table. Here's some more data for that trans table. And go back and say, hey, you know what? Let's reproduce a view 1. Notice that, I don't know if you can read this, but when you do that, when you actually ask it to create a SQL statement for you for like a view, and I didn't show you how to make that view, but you know what? If you wanted to take a view and from the schema, you're actually going to select it from the schema because it's there in the list. It will give you, and notice here it says create or replace. If you have it created, you're going to want to replace it, and that command will let you do either one. Now, there's some code that you can play with. It'll do this. It'll output the code in the sessions. Now, what do I want you to do? I want you to get in there and play. We'll help you out with the assignments, making that happen. So, guess what? That's it. Have fun.